Wisdom. It's an incredibly valuable asset. Some would say more precious than gold. It's attractive, appealing, admirable. Conversely, a lack of wisdom is the basis of immaturity, blind spots, and bad decisions. Wisdom. It can be gained over time, but it can't be rushed. But wisdom can be shared. That's precisely what we are here to do right now. Today, we are here to hack wisdom, to distill it, to understand it, and to process it. Why? To get better at life. Welcome to The Main Thing. This is your new 9-minute podcast. I'm your host, Skip Lineberg, and I've set out to interview the wisest people I know. We'll see what we can learn from each one when they're faced with an incredibly difficult, soul-piercing question. Welcome back to The Main Thing podcast. I'm your host, Skip Lineberg. Listening for the first time? Welcome. Hey, I encourage you to look around. After you've listened to this episode, check out a few more of our 9-minute doses of wisdom. Then, if you like what you hear, I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss a single episode. If you want to keep up with us and see what's coming, you can connect with us on social. On all the major platforms, you can find us as @TheMainThingPod. A hearty welcome back to all my subscribers, and a massive thank you to my patrons. As we cruise into Season 3 of this podcast, we have something a little special for you. Our special guest is the youngest guest ever to appear on the Main Thing podcast. At age 19, she brings a unique perspective and some terrific wisdom. Our guest today is an artist. She loves to travel and has visited Italy and Haiti, as well as many cities across the U.S. Her hobbies include cycling, painting, and photography. Presently, she is studying interior architecture at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And she is my daughter. Chloe Lineberg joins us today from Parkwood Studios here in Charleston, West Virginia. Get ready. Over the next 9 minutes, you will discover why Chloe Lineberg is one of the wisest people I know. Chloe Lineberg, welcome to the Main Thing podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, we've been talking about this for quite a while now, haven't we?
Yes, it's been in the works.
Well, it's good to finally make it happen. Chloe, you've just finished your freshman year of college in the midst of a pandemic, no less. So you've been through a really rough experience. I wanted you to talk about your opinion, your feelings on what are parents of college students, including me and your mother, what are we missing or possibly underestimating in terms of how rough last year's college experience actually was and how it affected you and your peers, the people that went through that with you?
I really appreciate that question. I think, your whole educational journey is supposed to culminate in the experience of going to college. And I think everyone around me, adults specifically, really hyped up the fact that I would meet my lifelong friends. And I think it is so hard to turn your social battery back on after coming out of quarantine. And so, in college, you really have to be able to make friends and, learn how to talk to professors and stuff like that. And I think that after a year of just being kind of not having to do any of that, I think it was very hard to just turn that back on and have to figure it out on my own. And I think that a lot of parents are underestimating how isolating it was, because I think this class, these few classes of students have just been commended for their resilience so much. And I think that that's not an endless supply kind of thing. We're not necessarily endlessly resilient, and I think that a lot of people have taken that for granted and just kind of said, oh, well, they've been through so much, they'll adapt. And I think I've just always said I'm kind of tired of looking for silver linings. I just want something to be plain good. But all that to say, it was a rough year, and I think we're all focusing on looking forward. And I think that I would love it if adults stopped asking me about my year and just asking about next year and getting excited about that.
So you're ready to shift the conversation to looking forward.
Exactly.
Okay. I'd love to hear you talk just a little bit more about the toll that it took on you and people around you. Like, how are you and your friends feeling? What did that do to you? Did it change you? Did it change the way you acted, behave, think? Give us a few thoughts on that. Most of my listeners are, older adults, baby boomers, Gen X who have kids, and this could possibly help them help their kids and relate to them better, more effectively. There might be a blind spot. They might be tone deaf to something that you could open their eyes to.
Sure. I think academic burnout has always been a thing, even in normal circumstances. But, most of us didn't sign up voluntarily for online school. And I think that, learning styles are something that's very important. Teachers take that into account in normal classrooms. So for someone like me who is a more hands-on visual auditory learner, a lot of that is missing from the educational experience that you get online, especially from a course that was not meant to be taught online. And I had a lot of teachers who didn't change lesson plans to adapt. So I think that I'm someone who has always loved anything academia, and I've been naturally, talented at it. But I think that for me, it was a huge shock when I lost my motivation to do things, because it's not the same when you don't reap that reward of getting handed a paper with a good grade on it, or talking with your friends, working on a group project.
Sure. It's a whole different energy, isn't it?
Exactly. So
or
I think
lack of
that
energy may be a better phrase.
Yes, for sure. I think that that's something that adults have underestimated about this experience.
As I talk to my peers who are parents, we and a lot of our kids sought out counseling for the first time. We took a deeper ownership of our mental health. And, my informal survey is that 7 out of 10 families are getting counseling to get well in terms of their mental health. What do you see from your perspective?
For me, I started doing counseling through my university, and just signing up for that, they had a record amount of people seeking help that year. So it was hard to get an appointment. So I definitely think, people might not be talking about it as much with their peers, but I definitely think that those services are being used. And just in the social media space, people are being very open about it too.
That's a really good thing,
trend.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Because I think prior to the pandemic, there was some degree of stigma around all that, and it was kept private and it wasn't spoken about. And I'm so glad to have that out in the open.
Yeah, me too. I think it's so ignorant, but I used to think that I wasn't unwell enough for counseling, but I think I've learned that everyone can truly benefit from it, even non-pandemic related things.
Sure. This is the point in the show where we would talk about how we know one another, how we're connected. But I think that's pretty obvious. You're my daughter.
Yes. Day one.
Yep. Chloe, this brings us to the sort of the pivotal point in the show where I ask each of my wise guests the fundamental question. So, Chloe Lineberg, what's the main thing you've learned so far in your lifetime?
The main thing I have learned in my lifetime is that growth is not a constant upward progression and comes with a lot of hills and valleys.
Oh, wow. So not a straight line, huh?
Exactly. I think that there's a motivational mindset that we have developed as a society that is constantly being preached to us, that focus on just getting better, doing one thing a day to help yourself be better. And as much as those tidbits are helpful and can make you feel good, I think that those, I've tried that. I think a lot of that left me feeling empty, and it's discouraging when maybe you try some of that stuff and you're not successful at it. I think a lot of times when something doesn't go the way that I wish it would have, I think that I've been left feeling like failure, which is something that I honestly don't believe in as much anymore, the concept of failure. I think through the years, and specifically this past year, I have definitely not been at my quote-unquote peak. And, you know, social media has a big role in that, of making you feel like you need to be at your peak.
Right.
So I think that, you know, everyone's showing their accomplishments, their highlights. And you can sit back and look at that and think, well, you know, all I did today was go get a coffee and clean out my closet or something, or just sit on my phone all day. And I just think that I have learned that whatever I'm doing today, you know, as long as it's not something harmful, I think that it's getting me somewhere. You know, I'm learning things through the struggles, the learning experiences, and I think this year had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think is the downside or risk, Chloe, for someone who has not yet embraced the wisdom that you shared, that growth is not a straight line, it looks more like peaks and valleys? What do you think the risk is for someone who is not aware of that?
I think the risk is just feeling like you're not enough. In your life, the goalpost is constantly being moved because you're reaching for bigger and better things. Your arena is getting larger, and the stakes are higher. So I think that if you're constantly reaching for tangible goals like that, or just not rewarding yourself for the small things or giving yourself grace, then I think it can feel impossible to get where you want to be. And you're just going to wind up feeling like you've failed. Yeah, that's it. That's the risk. Well said. That's a great place to stop, Chloe. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing your wisdom. And this has been really fun. Yeah, thanks for having me. Wow, 9 minutes is up. That goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. I hope you're left wanting more. Sync up with us again next time on The Main Thing for 9 more minutes of wisdom. Hey there, Wisdom Warriors. Skip here with something to share. We have a new way for you to help support the production of our show to keep the wisdom flowing. We call it the Main Thing Merch Store. Really, it's a simple way for you to get the things you might already be using every day. Items like water bottles, tote bags, mugs, tumblers, and even beach towels. All are adorned with our beautiful marigold and burgundy brand mark. Now, when you buy Main Thing merch, it helps you remember and share the wisdom you get here at the Main Thing Podcast. It helps support the people, processes, and operations that make this show possible. So scroll up in the show notes. Click the hyperlink to go shopping at the Main Thing merch store. When you get there, be sure to use the promo code WISDOM at checkout to snag a 10% discount. That's the word wisdom in all caps. Saving 10% on your purchase? Now that's a really wise move.